I'm Sam Hilmer from Trouble and the You Are Here Festival.
Patrick Higgins.
You Are Here Festival. So the You Are Here Festival takes place in a gigantic life-size maze. We've been doing it for 6 years. First one went up in 2007. And this is the first time that we've made the entire maze completely see-through. This is a performance and time-based arts festival that happens in a huge sculptural maze. And we build it into the gallery space. And then we invite, I think there's about 48 bands playing, probably 6 DJs, 10 visual artists working in the space. And it's basically, it functions as an art piece on its own because, the maze is a sculpture and it's bedecked with sculptures. It's also an invitation to a huge swath of other artists that we invite into the space to sort of learn about how they would deal with having to do their thing in response to and in dialogue with the physical confines of the maze. So this is Laura, sculptor, projectionist, my wife, and we like first created or started talking about doing the maze in '06, and I credit you with the maze idea.
I credit you.
No, that's ridiculous. You came to me and said that you wanted to build a maze.
Right, but what I wanted to do was build a series of rooms that you had to wait online to get through.
Right.
And then you said nobody would come.
Right. Okay, whatever. Anyways, we came up with it together, and she lays. I mean, you say what you do.
Well, for this particular maze, I did the first floor plan, and then Lawrence and I reworked it about 7 million times, came up with this design, and then Lawrence and I reworked it like 7 million times. And I also made a bunch of sculptures that are kind of like residents of the maze that are beckoning and inviting people to come in. And they're sort of symbolic of the plight of the person who's lost in the maze and kind of entangled in existence.
Basically, the idea from this maze, this is the third one that we've done, came from our past 2 experiences where we had made the maze out of doors. And people would go to the maze, and ironically, their big complaint would be like, "I can't see." You know what I mean? Which seemed ridiculous because, I mean, it's a maze, right? Nevertheless, we heard cats, and we decided to make a maze that you could see in, which I actually find to be considerably more infuriating than the one that I couldn't see in. But Lawrence was like our touchstone, think tank in terms of creating the design.
So when we started meeting to go over the design, we tossed around a lot of different ideas about how to make things see-through and what kind of materials that we could use and how we could organize those materials to create the kind of effect that we wanted. And we ran through everything from plexiglass to rope to like big pillars that were sort of almost jail bar spaced. There were all sorts of ideas that were tossed around, but what we ended up with was the idea of weaving wire or string into a pattern of some sort. And that was the initial idea.
Yeah, part of the concept of throwing a concert festival / arts festival in a maze anyway is the way that it's going to change typical performance practices by removing front rows, back rows, stages, even typical technological setups for performers. So it's also sort of built into the piece itself that your normal practice is disrupted when you do it here, which is what's going to make everything so exciting, both for people to check out and for the people who are involved in it. So this is one of the little towers from a piece called Interface Accolade by the sculptor Nick Doyle that we'll be installing in the maze today. It's one of many interactive visual art components to the Maze Fest this year. So there are these 2 controller stations that are hooked up to color-coded switches that will control a series of correspondingly colored lights positioned and installed throughout the maze. So we're stoked to have it. It also just kind of reinforces the audience participant quality that the whole festival is organized around, and it's going to be Bern.
Oh, and with Baby Castles, we made these black boxes that we are making look like treasure chests, hopefully, by the end of tomorrow. And they'll be decorated with some white sculpture. So we're going to have black lights here in the center of the maze. And obviously everything kind of brightly colored, and white will really shine. So I'm hoping that the tops of the treasure chests will shine and sort of beckon, and people will try to find the Baby Castles video games in the maze. And you know, then they'll open the chest, and there they'll be with treasure.
It puts everybody outside of their kind of vocabulary for dealing with something like this, and that's the sort of leveling of the playing field, where you no longer have people divided squarely into the categories of presenter, artist, audience.
So I'm Jeff Tobias, and I'm performing with Nymph and GSOL. Nymph is psychedelic world beat freakout jams, and then GSOL is drone music. We tried to do it so we would sort of be off to one side of a corridor so people can walk freely through the room, and it's another reason why it made a lot of sense for GSOL to debut here, is because it's a drone being performed by 12 musicians. They've all been given individual notes to play, and it's more texture than movement. And so the audience member can kind of choose their own mix. By walking through the maze, they are changing their own chordal experience of how GSOL sounds. For example, when I saw Larkin Grimm here a couple nights ago, she was walking through the maze while she was playing. And when Humans played here, they had the two dancers that were like, one of them like backed up into me and like forced me back through the maze. And so it's all for a lot of different reasons and in a lot of different ways. The audience gets a completely different experience than they would seeing a band at a traditional venue. Well, it's unusual, but that's what's exciting about it, because so often you have a band on a stage and they're performing to an audience, and there's sort of a built-in barrier there, and then there are bands that play house parties and play on the floor of venues, but this sort of like not only completely removes the wall between the band and the audience, but it like intermeshes the two. And that's a super exciting concept for me personally, and I'm sure that a lot of the other people in Nymph and GSOL would agree that it's like it helps make it less of a spectacle and more inclusive. It also looks just cool as hell.